Welcome to today's Inspired Talk, Unstuff Your Life, with a person known as the most organized man in America, Andrew Mellen. My name is Seth Streeter, the co-founder and CEO of Mission Wealth. Today's program will last 60 minutes, including Q&A, and it will be recorded and you'll have access to the playback link that you can review later and share with others. We've received many questions for today's program. You can also put in live questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we will group them together and do our best to have Andrew address as many of your questions as possible. Clearly, we are a group that's ready to get organized today. Since 1996, Andrew Mellen, the author of the best-selling book, Unstuff Your Life, has helped over 150,000 businesses and people simplify their lives and free up valuable time for what matters most. He's worked with clients such as American Express, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and the New York Mets. And he's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Real Simple, Oprah, and Time magazines, and he's been a speaker on the TEDx stage. So it's a new year and the ideal time for us to improve how we manage our stuff and get organized. So thank you so much, Andrew, for guiding us on this important journey.
It's my pleasure, Seth. Thanks so much for that introduction, and hello, everybody. I'm so delighted to get to spend this time with you. When we start every program that I do, we will take 3 breaths together. If you don't know me, and chances are many of you don't know me, I'm not a particularly woo-woo kind of person. And at the same time, the brain science tells us that as few as 3 breaths will reset our central nervous system. So that's an amazing hack that you can have in your toolbox for any time your day is not going the way that you want it to. Instead of doubling down on the anxiety or the frustration, the contraction, if you can expand a little bit and literally just take 3 concentrated, focused breaths, you will reboot your central nervous system. So 9 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock at night, at any point it's available to you. It's factory installed. You don't have to pay for it. And as long as you are breathing and alive, it's right at your fingertips, literally. So we're going to do that together. I breathe on a count of 5 in, hold for 1, and then exhale on a count of 5. And if you need to, you can shake it out. I'm going to. Always helps me just kind of settle into my chair. And this means that we're all doing the same thing at the exact same time. Sets us up for a greater sense of intention and success. And here we go. Excellent. Now we're all in sync together. Wherever we are in the world, we're all together in this exact same moment, aligned. Magic. I'm going to give you 15 seconds on the clock to set your intention for today. If you just want to learn more about getting organized or simplifying your life, I feel pretty confident that in the hour that we're together, that will happen. If you'd like to take away something more specific than that, I'm going to give you these 15 seconds to just set that intention for yourself. Like, I want to learn how to stop double booking myself, or I want to learn how to never lose my mobile phone again, or I want to learn how to let go of things that I've inherited from people that I love the people, but I don't love the stuff. Whatever it might be, specific goal means I can meet you there. Clock is running. And that's an exact 15 seconds. Isn't that amazing? If that was making your skin crawl, if you were getting a little antsy and you have a story running like, I don't have enough time to start this. If you can get agitated or upset in 15 seconds, imagine what you could actually leverage those 15 seconds to do in your life. It's a little teachable moment. I'm also going to share with you, I have an agenda for today. I have a 0 tolerance for meetings without agendas. I will not go to them. I'm fortunate, I work for myself, so I don't have to. And everybody on my team knows, don't show up for a meeting with me without an agenda or I will postpone the meeting. I don't know what we'll be doing. We might be doing something super useful and successful. We might be wasting time. I can't take that chance. So I won't meet if I don't know what we're going to be focusing on. And so this is a way of me walking my talk, and also for those of you who are a little type A and like to know where we're going before we get there, this helps you see where we're going. So you can sit back and relax. I'm a very safe driver. I've never had a moving violation. And this is also not my first trip down this road. So you can sit back and relax. You're in good hands, and we'll cover everything that we need to cover, and we'll have plenty of time for your questions when we get there. Now I'm going to share with you a few costs of disorganization, not necessarily to freak you out, but to really ground this in the math. Because when we think about both time management and organization, they are rooted in math. The solutions to your problems are rooted in math. Story, and we'll talk about story some, the unconscious narrative that is running our lizard brains, that is not what we want to be leveraging when we're trying to simplify our lives and unstuff our lives, get organized, and even more importantly than getting organized is staying organized. And so again, I want to ground this in some statistics and some math, so we understand that this is not fungible and it's not amorphous. It's very concrete. The first statistic I'm going to share with you is that 80% of the paper and information you're holding on to, you will never use again. And this could be the first time that story crops up for you. You could be thinking, oh, Andrew, you don't know me. I'm an amazing researcher. The documents and the things that I have downloaded and that I've saved will definitely come in handy someday. I'm not exactly sure when, but this is good stuff. I am the exception to your rule. And this is what I want to lovingly say to you. I've been doing this work for over 26 years. I've worked in every country on the planet. And in those 26 years, I've yet to meet the exception to this rule. So you might be exceptional in any number of ways. And I've had clients that are Nobel Peace Prize winners. So you might be exceptional in any number of ways. When it comes to this statistic, I feel very confident that you are, in fact, my rule and not the exception. The average adult tells 200 lies a day, which is my absolute favorite statistic. And again, this might kick up something of like, oh my God, you're challenging my integrity. I'm not challenging your integrity. 2/3 of them will probably never come out of your mouth. It will just be things that you're telling yourself. And I will share a short example with you. The other day I was working out with my trainer over Zoom. We're not in the same room. And I'm lifting weights. I'm lifting barbells. And while I'm lifting weights and he's coaching me, I'm having these conversations with myself about all kinds of things that have nothing to do with literally picking up heavy objects, pushing them towards each other, and then bringing them back down. Our mind just makes up stuff all day. And as I said, a good 2/3 of them will probably never come out of your mouth, but 1/3 of them might. And they will seem as innocuous as saying, hey, Seth, I'm so sorry to bother you. Total lie. If I was sorry to be bothering Seth, I wouldn't be bothering him. So there's another way to get Seth's attention, which would be to say, hey, Seth, I need your attention for a moment. I'm sure you had a plan for what was going to happen over the next hour, and that's about to change. You'll have some feelings. We'll make some time to process through them. And I still need to have happen what I need to have happen. I didn't fake apologize for interrupting him. I acknowledged that my actions have consequences, and I told the truth. So you'll start to see how these 200 lies play themselves out. And it can become a game for you, and certainly anybody that you work with, that you live with, that you interact with, to start to recognize where you are fudging the truth. And often we will do it, and then we will tell another 200, one of our 200 lies behind it. We will say, well, I'm just trying to be a nice person, or I'm trying to take care of somebody's feelings. Understand that it's not our job to manage other people's feelings. We hope that they're adults. If they're children, then you have a certain sense of stewardship for their well-being, but still not necessarily taking care of their feelings. If you tell your 4-year-old that they can't do something, they'll have some feelings about it. Your job is not to mollify those feelings, but to make room for them to be upset and still hold fast to what you've shared with them. So when we're doing this with adults, we don't have to really worry about taking care of people's feelings. We can just tell them the truth and trust that they can synthesize it themselves. The last statistic I'm going to share with you is that the average adult will waste 1 year of their life looking for lost or misplaced items. First of all, this is one of the places where I would say, please don't be average. Don't be above average in the sense of wasting more time. Be perhaps less than average and waste less time. And of course, nobody, regardless of how frugal or responsible you are, would waste a year of your life looking for your mobile phone or looking for your keys or looking for your wallet. After a day or two, you'd probably contact your credit card companies and the Secretary of State to get a new driver's license and your cards replaced. You'd call a locksmith and get new keys cut. You would go to the mobile phone store and get a new phone. I call this nickel and diming ourselves out of a year of our life because it's 5 minutes here, it's 10 minutes there, and we will tell ourselves one of our 200 lies. I'm going to make up that lost time. Here's the thing about time. You can't make it up once you've spent it. You can bank money, you cannot bank time. So if you tell yourself, I'm going to get up extra early tomorrow morning, it's 3:30 for everybody in your time zone. It's not 3:30 for you and 4 o'clock for them. So you haven't gotten an edge on them. We often tell a lot of these lies around our relationship to the clock and time. Clutter is nothing more than deferred decisions. So if you look around your home or your office, or if because of COVID, your home is your office now, if you look around and you see piles of things, stacks of things, you might be thinking, well, they all have a relationship to each other, but this is what I want you to know. The first thing that you set down in and of itself was maybe not clutter, it was just a thing. You set it down and you said, I'll get back to that later. That was one of your 200 lies. Then you set something else down on top of it and you said, hey, this is like that. This is actually good time management. I'm going to make a tidy pile, maybe, or less than tidy pile of things that have something in common. And then again, no time now, but later when I have more free time, another one of your 200 lies, I will deal with all of these things. This is actually a good strategy. And I will make piles of things that have something in common, and then later I will deal with them. That's what causes clutter. And here's the fix. Because we know that 80% of the stuff that you're holding on to, you'll never use again, you could easily throw it into the recycle bin and probably be done with most of it. And this is how powerful story is again. Story could be cropping up in the back of your brain saying, oh my God, that sounds tremendously freeing, Andrew, but what if there's something really important in that pile? Now you're about to tell yourself another one of your 200 lies. I swear I will only touch them one more time, and then I will make those decisions that I didn't make. Look, you know what your time is worth. You can spend all of your time drilling through those piles, trying to find a precious gem. And look, if the deed to your home is in there, if the title to your car is in there, if your living will is in there, your great grandmother's antique engagement ring, by all means, go find it. If what is in that stack of junk mail is also a recipe for lemongrass creme brulee that you ripped out of a Martha Stewart living 4 years ago, thinking this will be a delicious special dessert for a dinner party that you've never thrown, and you're still holding on to it, and you move it from pile to pile thinking, someday, I'm going to make that dessert and it's going to blow everybody's mind. That recipe could go in the garbage, in the recycle bin, and it would not negatively impact your life. And in fact, probably in 30 seconds, you could find that recipe on Epicurious or someplace else online. So only you know what your time is worth. But if you're going to tell yourself another one of your lies and drill down into that pile, just be mindful that when you get to the end of it, if you don't find anything that's useful and was worth the investment of your time, I want you to learn from that before you go into the next pile, right? Forewarned is forearmed. Now, when you start to get organized and you start to pull, like you open up the junk drawer or you open up the closet where you've been throwing dead technology, things will get bigger before they get better. I can't change that for you, but again, forearmed is forewarned. I want you to know that, so that you're not surprised when you open up the closet and suddenly as you spread things out, you discover, oh my God, that little stack of printers, I have 4 dead printers. I have 37 toner cartridges. I have 19 USB cables. Where did all of this stuff come from? And how did it fit in that closet? That's crazy. It's the same amount of things. It's just when you lay them out, they seem to take up more space. They don't actually take up more space. So they haven't morphed. It's not like that closet in that bank in the Harry Potter series when they go in the Deathly Hallows and they're looking for one of the Horcruxes and they're in there. It's Bellatrix's locker, and suddenly you touch something and it multiplies 3 or 4 or 12 times. This is not what's happening with your things. First of all, that's a fictional book and a movie, and it's not actually happening. It just feels like it. So be prepared for it. We've had this conversation. It shouldn't be shocking when you start to break things apart and you discover, oh my God, this takes up so much more space than when it was all shoved into the closet. Underlying everything is our mindset. So we need to look at how we think about, feel about, and interact with stuff to make changes. Anything that I share with you will be secondary in its impact compared to you and how you think about, how you feel about, and how you interact with stuff. That is going to have the most impact and influence over your relationship with these objects, these inanimate objects. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You don't have a calendar with a someday on it, neither do I. None of us do. If you are scheduling things for someday, you might as well just schedule them for never, because someday is never going to arrive. Never, later, there are 2 kinds of laters. There's a later which is 4 p.m. on Friday. That's a real later. Not now, stop bothering me is like the stepchild of someday. It's just another way of procrastinating or deferring a decision. So be mindful when you are invoking later and someday that you're actually just kicking the ball down the road, and you're going to eventually have to pay for that procrastination and that delay. It's important to recognize that you value what you choose. So if you choose not to make a choice, believe me, there's no judgment or shame or anything coming from me when I share this with you, but it's important that you recognize that no choice is a choice. By abdicating your responsibility and surrendering your agency to affect the outcome, you're still choosing to do that. You're not the victim of circumstances. If you've got a couple of things that you could be doing and you say, well, I don't want to do this because that doesn't look like fun, and I don't want to do this because that doesn't look like fun either, and you tell yourself, well, I'm just going to wait until one of them becomes obsolete, and then by default, I'll just do the one that's left, and then tell myself one of my 200 lies that's like, I always get the short end of the stick. How come everybody else gets to do the stuff that they love to do, and I'm always left with the dregs? Well, you chose to be left with the dregs because you procrastinated long enough for this to be the only viable thing that was left. That was all you. It didn't happen to you. You made it happen. And again, no judgment or shame around that. But everything that I'm sharing with you is really about stopping the shame conversation and stepping up into responsibility and then making different choices. If you're unhappy with the outcomes that you've been getting, making different choices through taking proactive responsibility. Along with talking about value, it's important to recognize that value isn't guaranteed. Just because you have a very expensive painting on a wall or some precious gems or precious metals, there's no guarantee that those will be worth what you paid for them or more down the road. So in my ecosphere, it takes 2 people for something to have value. You as the person who has it, and the other person who agrees with you, who's willing to write you a check for the amount of money that you think something is worth. Without that, you have an object and a story. So we tend to trade in fine art, precious metals, precious gems, fine antiques with clear provenance, real estate. But we have seen all of these things fluctuate in value. So if you are sitting on something thinking, this is my retirement, or this is going to send a kid to college, or whatever it is that you are thinking, without the other person in the equation, you have an object and a story. So my recommendation is figure out an action plan to liquidate that as soon as possible, or if the point is to continue to pass it down, how that's going to impact the future generations. Do they want your precious items, or will they just find them burdensome and in fact view them through the lens of, there's a whole bunch of money tied up in this thing that I don't want. How do I harvest that money out of it? And now they've got a problem to solve. So now, if you want a simple life, you need to make simple choices. And Seth, I believe that the chat function is open. So I'm going to ask you folks in a second to use the chat function just for this little bit of conversation. And I'm going to ask you to think of one thing in your life. We're not there yet, but one thing in your life that you brought into your life thinking it was going to make your life simpler that actually complicated it. And I'm going to give you the example of this clamshell so that you understand what I'm talking about. The clamshell comes with the promise of triple wash lettuce, organic lettuce, and compostable plastic, right? It's not compostable in our backyards. If you don't have an industrial compost pile, you're not going to be able to melt this corn plastic with your greens and browns in your garden. It's not going to happen. So even though it promises to make our lives simpler, and I've also found sand in the bottom of these clamshells, so I have to wash the lettuce, even though it says it's triple washed. So I'm washing something that said it was washed. And in addition, I have a piece of plastic that now needs to be rinsed out and recycled and taken out to the curb. So the promise is simple, the delivery is actually complicated, versus buying something at the green market where I know it's dirty. I have no expectation that it's going to be clean. I know I have to wash it. But when I'm finished with this does go in my compost pile. So this promises to be simple, but is complicated. This promises to be simple and is simple. So now I want you to think, I'm going to give you just 1 minute on the clock and think about one thing that you've brought into your life, thinking it was going to make your life more convenient, more efficient, that actually complicated it. It could be an app you've downloaded to your phone. It could be the bread machine that you bought thinking, I'm going to make fresh bread for my family. This is a great thing to do. You did it once. It's been sitting in the garage for the last 4 years. I don't care what it is, but I'm going to give you 1 minute on the clock to just share this exercise with each other. And there's no judgment. I mean, feel free to share it. Everybody's going to have one, so you don't have to be self-conscious about what yours was. And you got about 30 seconds left. Chocolate fountain machine. I'm loving these. These are great. Books for old photos, file cabinet. Robot vacuum, right? Excellent. Perfect. The weights, Astrid says. A smart TV. Excellent. These are wonderful. Fitbit watch, perfect. The dishwasher. Amazing. An Instant Pot. Oh, the trunk organizer, perfect. Yep, these are excellent. All right, and we're at time. Thank you all very much for playing along. I appreciate it. Now, when I talk about story, I'm talking about that thing that's running back here, right? So I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember Dragnet. This was an LA detective series in the 60s. And this character's name was Joe Friday. The actor's name was Jack Webb. The character's name was Joe Friday, and he would show up on people's doorsteps and he would say, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. That's how he was going to solve the crime. He didn't want the story. You know, he didn't want all of the superfluous narrative around the facts. He just wanted to boil it down to the absolute facts. So whether and if you don't remember Dragnet, you can certainly catch it on Hulu or YouTube. It was a great TV show, was not on long. You know, if that doesn't resonate with you, there's certainly Luther. a more current detective or even the 21st century version of Sherlock Holmes. Don't get attached to the detective. What I'm suggesting we do is channel our own inner version of sleuth. So we are hunting out the facts only and not the story. The story's going to trip you up, but the facts won't. And now I'm going to share with you some trademark technology. So wherever you are, I don't think we can see you. This is a webinar, not a meeting. But go ahead and put your fingers like this, and then I want you to repeat after me again, even though I won't be able to hear you. And this is the organizational triangle. This is trademark technology. I'm not joking about the registered trademark. This actually is trademarked with the United States government. And I want you to repeat after me. One home for everything. Like with like, something in, something out. And we'll do that one more time, because this is all you need to know about getting and staying organized. I boiled it down to 3 simple rules, and it just doesn't get easier. One home for everything, like with like, something in, something out. Excellent. And now I will explain to you what this looks like. One home for everything. First of all, one home for everything and like with like are how we get organized. Something in, something out is how we stay organized. And so one home for everything means everything has one home, only one home. Not going to debate it with you. Where you keep your keys can be different from where I keep my keys. Your keys have a home, my keys have a home. If you carry a bag with you, your keys should have a home in the bag, not at the bottom of the bag along with whatever else is there, old candy wrappers and possibly some lipstick or, some chewing gum, whatever, the bag is not gender specific. But if you're dropping things in the bottom of a bag, that's not the home for it. It should be on a hook or something inside the bag so you can easily find them. Everything has one home, only one home. It can only ever be one of 2 places. You will find anything in 30 seconds or less if you apply this rule. Like with like means all like objects live together, not most of them. So we don't keep most of the tools in the garage, but we keep the Phillips head screwdriver in the junk drawer in the kitchen because we have a story that says, these knobs always come a little loose. I don't want to go all the way out to the garage to have to get that screwdriver. It just makes it, this is a good time management hack. I'm going to keep this Phillips head screwdriver in this junk drawer. And then when I need it, it's right at my fingertips. The problem, of course, is that you don't remember that. You still probably go out to the toolbox to look for it. As you're digging through the toolbox, you're thinking, wow, I have a pipe cutter. I have all these weird tools. Do I not have a Phillips head screwdriver? Where could it be? You might even end up going out to the hardware store and buying another one. And then 3 weeks later, you're digging through the junk drawer among the leftover bread twist ties, possibly some hardware from some IKEA furniture that somebody put together that they always throw extra in the box and you think, well, I should keep it. I mean, it came with the furniture. Why would I let it go? And maybe some carry-out menus and whatever else you shove in that miscellaneous junk drawer. You'll find the screwdriver and you'll think, God, who put the screwdriver here? Then you'll remember, oh, I put it here because now I remember why I did this. You think, oh, now I will never forget it. Another one of your 200 lies. You throw it back in the drawer. 3 weeks later, you've forgotten that it's there again. So like with like, and one home for everything is going to cure 85% of your disorganization when you apply those 2 rules. And those are the only 2 things you need to do to get organized. Because once everything has a home and all of its siblings are there, everything is where it needs to be. At that point, all we're doing is maintaining order in our home. We are living with stuff equilibrium. That's what I call it. And so when something comes in, something's going out. If you have an 8,000 square foot house, you've got 1,000 square foot walk-in closet. You have 150 pairs of shoes. I am not going to tell you that's too many pairs of shoes. If you have room for 150 pairs of shoes, I will celebrate your 150 pairs of shoes. What I will remind you, though, is when you buy the 151st pair, because you only have 150 cubbies for all of your shoes, it must be because you're ready to retire one of the first pairs of shoes. It's very simple, particularly if you ever tell yourself the story, which may be one of your 200 lies. I just don't have enough time, to do X, Y, or Z. But then At another moment, you will tell yourself, well, I've just got 5 minutes before this appointment I need to kill 5 minutes. So I'm just going to flip through this catalog, or I'm going to run into that store and maybe there's something I can pick up. If you don't have enough time to do the things that are actually important to you, you definitely don't have time to be murdering it. And if you already have enough of everything that serves you, I don't care how cheap it is, what a bargain it is. It's not a bargain if you don't need it. You have no business augmenting and creating more clutter for yourself if everything is already doing everything that it needs to do and you're not missing anything. You can always upgrade. You can replace things, but why would you keep accumulating things? There's no need for it, particularly if you aren't able to get to all of those high value activities that matter to you, like showing up on time for your kid's soccer game, or making a meeting, or seeing a play when we can go to the theater, or watching a movie on television during COVID. Whatever it is that you aren't able to get to now because you don't have enough time, why would you spend it accumulating things? It's the lowest common denominator of activity. Now, when it comes to getting and staying organized, these are your best friends: a timer and a stopwatch. Timer is so that we start to move into math-based goals rather than narrative goals. From this point forward, I would prefer if you never said, I am going to work on this until I'm finished, because I don't think any of us know what finished looks like until it actually happens. But what we all know what looks like is 15 minutes. So if you say, I'm going to work on this for 15 minutes and set a timer, we know exactly what you set yourself up to do and when you're complete, because the task wasn't based on any other goal than staying focused and getting something done in that quantity of time. So when the timer goes off, you were successful. Failure breeds failure. Success breeds success. If the last time you tried to do something, you were unsuccessful, the next time you attempt it, you're already feeling defeated. Whereas if the next time you try something, you are successful, the time after that, when you try it, you're already feeling empowered and buoyant, like, oh my God, I didn't think I was going to last 15 minutes in that closet. Suddenly, I'm on fire. I'm going to set the timer for another 15 minutes or maybe even 30 minutes. And you see how it builds momentum and keeps you moving forward. The stopwatch is to time everything that you have a story about and no math. So you might have a story that it takes you 15 minutes to get ready in the morning. Does it really? Have you timed yourself? Does it take 15 minutes? Does it take 12 minutes? Does it take 30 minutes on a day that you're washing your hair and, needing to press a garment? If you will time yourself for 7 days, this is a noble experiment. This is not a gotcha experiment. So the idea is not to humiliate yourself, but just to discover how long things actually take. And so my suggestion to you is spend 1 week, 7 days, timing everything that you do that is a recurring task. The one-off tasks are somewhat interesting, anecdotally, but they're not so useful when we're trying to come up with math-based solutions. But knowing how long does it take you to brush your teeth in the morning? How long does it take you to bathe? How long does it take you to get dressed? How long does it take you to make breakfast or coffee and breakfast? How long does it take you to get the kids set up with food? How long does it take you to get the kids set up for school? How much time do you have to spend with the kids in school if they're homeschooling, either due to COVID or because you're homeschooling them? How long does it take you to do a load of wash, load the dishwasher, et cetera, et cetera? Once you have all of this data, you're going to discover, it's going to blow your mind. You're going to discover how you're actually spending your time and how long things actually take rather than what you think they do. As a rule, we tend to either overestimate or underestimate how long things take. So this is going to poke a hole in a bunch of those 200 lies. And again, it's not to catch you in a lie as much as it is to empower you to make different strategic choices once you have that data. Now, when we think about stuff, and many of you had these questions, and when we get to the Q&A, we'll get to it, right? About ancestors and honoring ancestors. And this image is an image of an Oban ceremony, which is a Japanese ceremony where we honor the dead. I say we, even though I'm not Japanese. I've participated in Oban ceremonies at a Zen monastery that I used to spend time at. So there are many ways that we can honor our ancestors that don't require us to fetishize objects. So it's important to remember that your dad is not the clock, your grandmother is not the teacup, and no gift is a burden. Nothing freely given should ever weigh you down. If it comes with strings, you now have my permission to cut those strings. And if in the past you have been prone to giving things to people with strings attached to them, I'm going to lovingly suggest that you stop that. A gift is something given voluntarily without payment in return to show favor towards someone, honor an occasion, or make a gesture of assistance. Gifts are not lessons. They're not punishment. They're not motivational tools. They're not blackmail. So if you have a tendency to give people things hoping that this is going to speed them along their self-improvement path, I'm going to suggest that you stop that. Enough said. Also, when it comes to objects, it's important to remember that the sandwich was special, not the bag it came in. So if you're somebody who likes to keep the boxes that things came in, whether they're collectibles or not, like the computer box or the printer box, certain things require the boxes in a secondary market, or they increase the value of the object on the secondary market when you go to sell them, like a Rolex watch. Having the fob and the tag and the box and all of those materials are better if you're going to sell the box, if you're going to sell the watch on the secondary market at a later date. If you have collectible bobbleheads, those boxes will be valuable when you go to liquidate your collection. The box that your Apple computer came in or your Dell tablet came in is not a collectible, and it doesn't have any inherent value when you're letting it go, when you're holding on to it. So you can let it go. And again, I just button this up by saying it's the sandwich, not the bag it came in. You focus on the object itself, not its wrapping paper. We're going to talk about, several of you had questions about email. So in my ecosphere, we have the 7 deadly time thieves, and those are interruptions, overcommitting, poor planning, multitasking, email, meetings, and procrastination. Those are the 7 deadlies. I'll tell you them one more time. Interruptions, overcommitting, poor planning, multitasking, emails, meetings, and procrastination. We in this setting, we're not going to go over all of them. It's just many of you had asked about email, so I'm sharing one of them with you. And these are my top 3 tips for managing email. The first one is check email only when you can read it and reply to it. And I'm going to help you understand the logic behind that. At best, you are wasting the time reading it because you will need to reread it when you have time to reply to it, right? So that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is you read the email, now you're agitated or upset by the contents of the email, but you don't have time to reply to it. So you've set yourself off, you've knocked yourself off your game. You can't concentrate and focus on what you're supposed to be doing because you're either composing the snarky response in your head or you're just so upset and agitated that you can't focus. So that's the worst case scenario. It's why this is my number 1 tip when it comes to managing your email. The next one is don't read and reply constantly throughout the day unless you have a customer service job where you must be responsive to your clients as soon as they write to you. Most people can answer email once an hour in their professional setting, or if not in your professional setting, twice or 3 times a day max. I am not a brain surgeon. If you are sending me an email thinking that I'm going to respond immediately, you are misguided. The best thing to do would be to probably text me or call me. You would want to do something that would get my attention because I'm not in my inbox. And the last rule that I'll share with you is if you haven't yet automated your email application or client. We used to call them email clients in the olden days in the tech world. Right now we call them email apps. If you haven't automated those by setting up rules or filters, and the terms are interchangeable, they just depend on which platform you're on. In a Mac world, we call them rules. I think in Outlook, we also call them rules. In Gmail might call them filters. So it doesn't matter where you are, but you can configure them. And any email program from AOL to Gmail will allow you to set up these rules or filters. And what they let you do is pre-sort emails before they land in your inbox into any number of subfolders that you would create. And you can sort them by sender, specific email addresses, or the domain, right? So in Seth's case, it could be any email from anybody at Mission Wealth could go into a folder called Mission Wealth. It doesn't need to necessarily be from Seth Streeter at Mission Wealth. It could be subject. It could be any subject that contains the words your annual report or annual report. It could, so you can see how you can create what I like to think of as nets to capture certain emails and direct them into subfolders. Don't worry that you're going to miss an important message, because any one of the subfolders that has a new message in it will have a circle with a numeric indicator in it telling you there's a new message in there. So if you scan those and you don't see any new messages, you don't have to worry that you're missing something important because it was redirected from your inbox into a subfolder. Tremendous time saver. Now, when everything is precious, nothing is precious. I'm going to share this story with you before we move into the questions. And this is when I was working with a private client on Long Island. We were cleaning out her grandmother's house. We found two things in the grandmother's house that were silver. One was a ball of aluminum foil under the kitchen sink because grandma had grown up during the Great Depression. The other was a sterling silver tea set. Now, if we just stayed on the surface, right, two silver objects, both belonging to grandma, we have to keep them both. Of course we don't. Even if you needed some aluminum foil, you could go to the dollar store and get another roll of aluminum foil. Hopefully we will avoid the kind of depression that grandma lived through, and we won't need that ball of aluminum foil. So we threw it in the recycle bin. The sterling silver tea set we sold at auction for $22,000. When everything is precious, you're living in a museum, which is unlikely, regardless of how beautiful your things are. Probably everything isn't of equal value and weight. And if nothing is precious, you're probably living in a dump, and that's probably not true either. So we have to be able to distinguish between trash and treasure as we're making these critical decisions about what stays and what goes. It typically isn't complicated. It's just sometimes we glaze over and don't want to become as specific and focused as we need to be to make those kinds of critical decisions. We just want to defer the decision and fall backwards instead of leaning in and staying mindful and present and aware about the choices that we're making. It's actually not very complicated. With that, I'm going to share with you that I've got a bonus for those of you who are, we had many questions about paper. And so I've got the perfect filing system label guide that I'm going to make available to Seth, that then he can get out to all of the folks that registered for this webinar. And that's my gift to you. And now we're going to open it up for some questions. Seth, do you have any questions you want to ask me, or should I just go through the questions that you've already given me first?
Why don't you start with the questions that I gave you first, and we'll start there.
Okay, perfect. So these are some questions that we got in advance from folks. The first one was, what's the best way to engage the whole family on stuffing? And I would say, identify a common problem. We seem to lose a lot of time as a family getting out of the door or getting ready in the morning. Does everybody agree? That's the first step. If everybody doesn't agree, if we don't have consensus, we can't proceed. We need a common problem to come up with a common solution. Otherwise, it becomes you dictating to your family, we have a problem, I've decided we have a problem, and I've decided what the fix is. You all need to get with the program. You will get zero buy-in, you will get a bunch of resistance, and it will not be a sustainable solution. So the first goal is identify the common problem, then work on the common solution, which is a cousin of how do you get your spouse to let go of stuff. How long you've been married is my question to you. If you've been married more than 3 weeks, you should not be surprised that your spouse has stuff. Focus on loving your spouse, not on their stuff annoying you. That's the recipe for a happy marriage. And if it's that big of a deal, you can try that thing with your spouse and say, hey, it seems like we have a lot of things in the house that don't necessarily serve us and are not supporting us in doing what we want to do. Would you agree? If they say, no, I think we have plenty of room and I love all the stuff that's around us, then you have a problem. They don't have a problem. And your choice is either a happy marriage or living alone with less stuff. And I'm not being facetious. I mean, it really is. I have friends who she's an architect and he is an engineer. He's super tidy. She is a hot mess. She built him a house in their backyard so that he could live on the same piece of property and be in complete control of his environment. They have sleepovers in each other's homes, but he can come visit her in the main house. They can have a meal together and hang out. And then when he's fed up with all of the mess, he can go back to his house. It worked for them. You know, Stieglitz and O'Keefe lived in Santa Fe and New York City. They found a way to make their relationship work. I don't think that was clutter-based. I think that was interests and geography-based, but still, you see, there are no rules about what a relationship looks like. That's one of your 200 lies, that we must live together and he has to get his act together. How do you declutter with 3 young kids? I would encourage you to gamify it. You should teach them the organizational triangle, and then you should set a timer and say, whoever gets the most stuff put away in the next 15 minutes wins a whatever, a fruit roll up or whatever you want to give them, a gift card, a trip to a place that they like to go to. It doesn't really matter what the reward is, but it needs to be something that they would all want to compete for. The other thing that I will tell you about kids is you might like lids, kids don't. So if you want them to put their toys back in a basket, don't put a lid on it. You're not going to live in an El Decor house unless you have a housekeeper who wants to follow behind your kids and put things away for you. If you want your kids to put things away, don't create obstacles. Every lid is a barrier to them putting things where you want them to go. So get attractive baskets that they can see the contents in, and then they can put the stuffed animals with the stuffed animals, the art supplies with the art supplies, the Legos with the Legos. It's very easy, and they will enjoy it once you teach it to them and explain it to them. They'll get on board. I've done this with many, many clients and their small kids. I like getting statements in the mail, so I review it when I receive it. Do you think getting it electronically is better? I think storing it electronically is better than storing it in paper. You can certainly get the paper version and still download the digital version and file it. I reconcile off my bookkeeper now reconciles my bank statements, but when I was reconciling them, I would either print them up or get them in the mail. I mean, some of the banks now start charging you to not be paperless. And so I didn't really want to give them the $1 for the statement. So I would download it and print it up and then check things off as I was reconciling and then shred it. My bookkeeper does that now, so I don't know whether she prints it or she doesn't print it, but I just save the digital versions now. So I think you can have the paper version. I wouldn't store the paper version. I would store the digital version. How do I best manage my email inbox? I think I've told you. How do I deal with FOMO regarding information overload? So let's be clear, right now, it's 12:50 Eastern, 9:50 Pacific. There's a sale happening someplace in the world. Somebody's having a bar mitzvah, somebody's having a wedding, somebody's having a funeral. There's a concert happening someplace. There's a soccer match happening someplace. All of these things are happening and we are not attending any of them. The quality of our life is not being negatively impacted by being right where we are in this moment. I think FOMO is all about our ability to stay focused. Is this a glass half empty mindset that you have or a glass half full? Saying no to something is saying yes to something we value more. Focus on that. Stop worrying about what you're missing and pay attention to what's actually happening. How do I deal with heirlooms? I think we've talked about that. And there's several heirloomy questions. So, I mean, how do I deal with heirlooms is a rather broad question, right? Are we talking about a brooch? Are we talking about a 14th century buffet? Are we talking about an old master painting collection? Are we talking about, you know, a collection of Yadro? The heirlooms will determine how you're going to deal with them. And the number one thing I would say is if they are intended for future generations, I would check in. If they are adults, I would check in with them and say, these are things that are currently in my possession that will eventually become yours. Do you want them? Yes or no? It is a yes or no question. You need to hear their answer. If they say, I love you, I don't love the stuff, that is not your prompt to start arguing with them. But don't you know how important this was? Great-great-grandma carried this all the way on her back from Ireland or, you know, Germany, whatever. You asked them a question, they told you, take it at face value. And then you can together with them strategize, okay, if we're going to liquidate these things, how are we going to go about doing that? And that ties into this is like the challenges of decluttering with an eye toward leading our children less to deal with. Clean up after yourself. Don't leave a mess for your children. It's only a challenge if you make it a challenge. Make decisions. What do they need? What do you need? What do they want? What do you want? It only becomes complicated or a challenge if you make it that. It's an easy problem to solve unless you stay stuck in the story. What's my approach to downsizing items? I think I've just explained it to you. I think having everything that serves you in whatever phase of life you're in is fine. It's always better to do your giving while you're living, so you're knowing where it's going. It would be much better, instead of people waiting for you to die to get X, Y, or Z, wouldn't you rather let them have it now so you can enjoy their enjoyment of having it while you're here to witness it, instead of them having to deal with it while they're also dealing with the grief while you're gone? Much better to be proactive than passive. I think we've just talked about this one. So the patterns that lead us to accumulate stuff is all about remaining unconscious. It's unconscious grasping at things, thinking that they are going to increase the quality of our life in an unconsidered way. So just bring your awareness to, like, what do we need to feel comfortable? What do we need to feel supported? What do we need to feel like we live in a beautiful home? How many footstools do you need? How many sofas do you need? How many upholstered chairs do you need? Coffee tables, television sets, iPads. It's not hard to figure these things out if you know what's important to you. I am now a caregiver for my spouse and sometimes get stressed by having to do everything. I'm very sorry. And there's no spin on that when I say that. I have several clients that are dealing with this. This is what is happening. The fact that you are doing everything is completely legitimate, and it is what's happening. It won't be like this forever, but if you are, this is the new normal. And so I think some of the discomfort comes expecting it to resolve itself on a timeline that is unpredictable. The more you can breathe, and if you don't have a meditation practice, I would encourage you to create one. The more you can just breathe and be with whatever is happening while it is happening, the less fraught it will feel. It's intense. Nothing that I can say is going to make it less intense, but it doesn't need to be like actively aggressive and hurtful. It just is what is happening. I've always had trouble separating physical possessions from memories. First of all, note that this person is speaking in an absolute, like I've always, right? It's a clue to one of your 200 lies. If something is always or never, chances are it's a 200 lie, because few things are all or nothing, right? So I've always had trouble separating physical possessions from memories they bring back, especially family items. you have chosen to blur the lines. This object in and of itself is a bell, right? I can tell you the story that this belonged to my great grandmother. She carried it over from Russia, and this was how she used to ring for the servants every morning to bring her breakfast. That may or may not be true. None of it really matters. It's either a bell that I use because I love it and it has function. It doesn't matter where it came from. The only thing that comes with a story is an American Girl doll. They come with a little booklet inside the box. Everything else has a story that we've accumulated. You can stop telling that story anytime you choose to. What are my thoughts on minimalism? I do not care for dogma in any form. So forced, sort of asceticism does not appeal to me. I'm an essentialist. I love beautiful things, and I want to have just enough beautiful things that serve me. I don't feel the need to aggressively reduce the amount of things that I have because some person, probably, a tech refugee who's got a 6 or 7 figure settlement as he left his practice, is now telling me that minimalism is the way to live my life, right? I'm not a Zen monk. I don't need to have just a begging bowl and a robe and a spoon. That isn't my path in life. So I can have all of the things that serve me, none of them that don't. That's how I feel about minimalism. And the last one that I have here is, how have your approaches changed since COVID? They actually haven't. It just requires even more attention to detail and being present, because now that home and work have sometimes been piled on top of each other, the separation that used to create some breathing room, commute time that used to create some breathing room, those transitions between worlds has been collapsed. So it just requires us to be even more mindful, aware of how we are moving through time and space, so that we don't create more clutter, more disarray, that our behavior isn't bumping into other people. And that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I wanted to ask just 3 more questions, and then we can close. We have a couple of questions around photos. What are your best practices on how to deal with our old photos?
Oh, well, again, this is a big question, right? Because there is no cookie cutter solution to photographs. The question that I'll ask you is, what's the end game for the photos? Do people want the photographs after you leave? Do they want them? Is it worth your time putting them in photo albums? In my world, I believe your kids, your grandkids for sure are digital natives. It's unlikely they're going to curl up in the window box with a cup of tea and a photo album looking at a bunch of dead people they don't know. So my suggestion is digitize the images and put them on digital frames, get them into circulation in the family and among people who care in a way that people can actually interact with them. And then from there, it gets more nuanced, but we don't have time for all those steps. So. Got it.
Okay. Second to last question is, I'm very curious about all the items that count as stuff that are not physical items. So what are the top stuffs that you see clients dealing with that aren't physical items, but they're keeping them from doing what they love the most?
Well, that's mental clutter, right? Mental or emotional clutter. And again, for as many people as there are flavors of mental clutter. I know I have many clients who lack for nothing material in the world and still constantly create fictional obstacles to their happiness for whatever reason. I'm not a therapist, so I can't necessarily shrink like why X is doing this versus why that person is doing that. What I can tell you is once everything has a home and all like objects are together, it will be really clear once everything's functional in your life. Look, I just make stuff up to keep myself trapped in this loop of ineffective, inefficient behavior. And I want to be happy. So I'm going to start to make different choices that get me closer to happiness. And it becomes very clear when everything is in its home that you're the problem, not the stuff at all. And what's our last question, Seth?
Last question is, what are the biggest no-brainer categories to begin unstuffing? 2 areas that we could start with.
Yeah, and actually, I'm gonna bend your question, because there is no area to begin in. As far as a category goes, this is how I want you to think about it. The fork in the road is either low-hanging fruit, a quick win, or the thing that is most compacted for you and a big win. Neither is preferable. It all depends on how much stamina, energy, and momentum you have. If you are feeling a little puny and tentative and you're trapped in a lot of story, I say go for a quick win. And that could be as simple as assigning a home for your keys, your wallet, your mobile phone, picking up junk mail and throwing it in the recycle bin, clearing off surfaces of things that definitely don't belong there. That's a fast win, and that will get you in gear, and you will be able to build momentum there. If you're feeling strong like a clutter warrior, go for the sad, scary corner in the basement. Go to the place where the most stuff is that every time you see it causes you the biggest heartache, because you'll get the biggest win there once you vanquish that. Either way, set the timer, and 15 minutes to 3 hours, 15 minutes on the short end, 3 hours on the long end, and just get to work, and you will make progress. And as I said before, failure breeds failure, success breeds success. Once you start moving the dial, it will become easier and easier to move the dial beyond that.
Great. Well, you went through those questions really impressively. Thank you so much, Andrew. You have given us so many tangible ways that we can improve our relationship with stuff and get some valuable time back for what matters most. Those of you who would like to dive in deeper and kind of continue this, you can go to andrewmellen.com, and in the future he'll be doing some 5-day challenges. So it'll kind of help us put our feet to the fire.
Yep.
We will also be emailing you all a blog post with Andrew's top tips. And we'll also be giving you a recording link so you can watch this again and review it, and you can maybe share it with some of your friends and loved ones. And we also will be sending you a brief survey, so we really would appreciate your feedback. I'm happy to announce that our next Inspired Talk will be with Dan Buettner, the best-selling author of The Blue Zones. He'll be sharing lessons on longevity and how we can live longer, more fulfilling lives. This event will be on April 7th. If you're interested in other inspired living programs, including our small group conversation circles and our larger group wisdom shares, please feel free to reach out to your Mission Wealth advisor. You can also go to missionwealth.com and look under Inspired Living. It's our aim to really add value to your finances and to your overall health and happiness. So at this time, thank you again for joining us. And thank you again, Andrew, for a wonderful conversation. And you may disconnect.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.